The military is, we're talking leadership as a command and control model, but it also is a high pressure environment that gets people aligned and caring for each other. So I had all these interest in supporting people to create communities that bring the best in people. And that kind of led me to do it in a non-command and control model that kind of oppresses our creativity and individuality and self-expression. And I had this experience of oneness, or this experience that my body is actually made of consciousness and I'm part of this infinite field. If leadership is an inside job, and then we have to have a vision for ourselves. If they resonate, then they're naturally drawn to you.
Guys, I got Dr. Amram, MIT and Harvard grad, led 2 tech startups to IPOs, then had a spiritual awakening that flipped his world. Now a top psychologist coaching CEOs, he's cracking the code on leadership, not with EI, but with SI, spiritual intelligence. Thank you, Dr. Amram, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for your kind words. Let's see if I can live up to that.
So right away, we're going to have the link, because I read your book on spiritual intelligence, and our audience is right there. So first thing we want everyone to do is, before you do the podcast, just trust me, go down on the link below and purchase the book. Dr. Amram, I want to get into your journey. And I know it spanned the Israeli military, tech entrepreneurship, and psychology. And then all of a sudden you have like this profound personal spiritual crisis and then an awakening. Can you kind of walk me through the success part? And then all of a sudden, what happened?
Wow. So how many lifetimes do we have on the magnet? So by the way, just call me Yosi.
Okay.
But if I may, I will rewind a little bit, like you say. So the journey, and to make sense of it, I will start in the Israeli military, which is, I grew up in Israel, war-torn part of the world. I was actually a pacifist and shy and introverted math and science kid, was drafted into the military, mandatory for Israeli men. And to my surprise, and fortunately it was a peaceful time, not like it's horrific there now. To my surprise, I had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment and won all these military awards, despite the fact that the military chafed at my soul. So the military is, we're talking leadership as a command and control model, which is necessary and effective in battle. You don't have the time to go into a conference room and whiteboard a situation and get consensus. Someone says, okay, you go here, you go there, this is what we're doing. And it's effective. But it also is a high pressure environment that gets people aligned and caring for each other and builds really deep camaraderie. So I had all these feelings but interest in supporting people to create communities that bring the best in people. And that kind of led me to do it in a non-command and control model that kind of oppresses our creativity and individuality and self-expression. So that led to my lifelong dream to build an organization and lead people based on different values. And that's what got me to come to the US and study and so on, become an entrepreneur. And it was actually before the days of the internet. I won't get into the story of what the company did, but I'll just say this. It was personalized newspaper. You'd get Jason's Morning News in your fax machine based on learning agents. This is late 80s, early 90s, well before the internet, well before any of these ideas became mainstream, personalized interactive media. And then the internet came, and it was clear that all of that is going to go away because it's all going to become free on the internet, ad supported. So that really terrified me. And we had raised tens of millions of dollars from top VCs, etc. And I was frozen by fear and had worked 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week. So I was burnt out. I got depressed, but I persisted and persevered. And we figured out an internet strategy, turned the business around, and took the company public. And we were a high-flying internet stock. And I was trying to relax in the midst of this chaotic birth of the internet, and was getting a deep tissue massage one day just to relax. And I was so relaxed that my ego kind of dissolved. And all of a sudden I had this experience of oneness, or this experience that my body is actually made of consciousness and I'm part of this field, infinite field. And the floor that I was looking at through the face grater looked like it was inside of me. So it blew the circuits of my mind and threw me into this manic episode. And my board, of course, was like, hey, you need to get grounded, man. Go take a leave of absence for 3 months and chill out. So they passed a resolution to put me on a leave of absence. Nothing of it they call it a voluntary leave of absence. And there was a press release that said, announced to the public that I went on a leave of absence, and I wasn't going for it. And I was like, okay, then if you guys are doing that, I'm resigning, etc. And it became a big drama and headlines in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, that I was emotionally unstable and all of that, which brought up I was all of a sudden excommunicated, canceled from this tech world that I was at the top of. And that was an embarrassing, shame-filled experience, and people stopped returning my emails and calls. So I'm just highlighting that was a crisis, but it was very painful because the company was my baby. But it did change the direction of my life and then got me to ask these deeper questions like, why was I so identified with the business? Why did I get depressed? Why did I get overworked? Was this awakening real, or was this delusion, spiritual delusions, which kind of got me to go and study and become a clinical psychologist? And then from there, I discovered this term spiritual intelligence and researched it and so on. So the success was the IPO you're asking, but then from that I fell off, and it was a pretty big fall. And then I had to pick myself up and do all this inner work to understand what happened and what this was about. But then it turned out to be one of the biggest blessings of my life because it put me on a much more meaningful path.
I want to, Yosi, I think this is really interesting because I want to kind of go back just a little bit, because everybody always asks, I was in the Marine Corps. So, as far as leadership goes, it's like, how do you take kids that they don't have a resume, they have no experience, they have nothing. And then you can train them so well and get them to operate in, combat situations. I think obviously spiritual intelligence and, the military industrial complex and all that. But why do you think just as a side note, I know you did really well in the military and I did too. Why do you think they're so good at that form of leadership?
Boy, that's a good question. In the military, well, I think I functioned well under pressure, and I was pretty centered. And I think one of the things you have to do under combat situation, high pressure. I was, in the military. I was in an Air Force anti-aircraft gunner. You get an airplane coming down at you. The whole thing is like 10 seconds. You got this boom. A lot of people freeze. Mm-hmm. And so how can you function under pressure, stay centered, keep your mind? So I think that's an important quality that I had. And I was smart, and there's a lot of technology and questions to how you operate this and strategy. So it's a combination of being centered and grounded and functioning well under pressure, and then also being intelligent and being creative and figuring out how to function, and then having the trust and the confidence in yourself to take initiative when everybody else is lost or frozen or confused, to say, okay, this is what makes sense. Let's do this. And people are just looking for that clarity. And if it makes sense and you have that presence, that gravitas, then people are going to follow you, because we need somebody in those crisis moments.
Yeah. And I know it probably helped you, I know as for me, taking those Marine Corps principles and putting them into business was, because I was like, there's nothing as hard as Marine Corps boot camp. Once I'd done that, and then from there, I was in Somalia, Bosnia, and Haiti. So you're not going to give me anything harder than that. Where most people haven't yes. And most people haven't experienced that. So an 80-hour a week is not a big deal, in that time frame when you're trying to do the hustle, the grind, and everything else. And that's the opposite of what your book is about. And I want to get into when you started realizing, because in your book you talk about it's an inside job. Yeah. Leadership is. When did you start realizing it? Was it on the massage table? Was it when you were experiencing fear? When did you begin to think that this is an inside job? I got some issues inside. that I've got problems?
Well, as I said, coming out of that, getting depressed and what have you, and then also feeling the shame of losing that, and so I had to understand myself, and then it became reinforced when I was coaching others, and they were like, okay, well, how do I appear inspiring? And I would ask my clients, okay, do you want to be inspiring or do you want to be inspired? And they look at me and they're kind of puzzled. What do you mean? What's the difference? I'm like, what do you experience? How do you tell if you're inspiring? Oh, well, I look outside and see the effect on others. And how do you decide if you're inspired? I look inside. Do I feel this way? So, if I'm trying to impress other people and appear inspiring, I mean, I could take a public speaking class and that's great and be helpful. And I can learn how to tell good jokes and all those techniques, which are helpful. But you're giving away your power, then you're becoming a politician. Okay. Like, okay, I need to see what the effect I have on other people. So I'm losing my authentic power. My power and my validation is outside of me. Nobody can lead anybody else until when we lead ourselves. Nobody can inspire anybody else until when we're inspired ourselves. So when we're fired up with enthusiasm, with passion, we have a vision that calls us, that we're devoted to, that we're committed, then people feel that vibration, that energy. And if they resonate with that vision and those values and that mission, then they're naturally drawn to you. And then you have a cohesive team of people that are aligned around a shared purpose, mission, and values. And then you have this community that everybody is supporting each other. So we have a sense of belonging. We have an alignment, everybody's energy, everybody's rowing in the same direction. But it starts with getting that spark of inspiration, that vision, that passion,
How do you do that when you're so burnt out, though? Like you were in that stage. I've been there. And I think most leaders that are listening to this are probably operating at some mild form of depression. They're drinking alcohol at night or during the afternoon when they're having meetings. They're just trying to survive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and we've all been there. I shouldn't say all, many of us, most of us have been there. And yeah, so it takes some soul searching thing. And then we talk about vision as leaders. So we think, okay, well, this guy's a great leader. Steve Jobs, he envisioned the world like this, or Martin Luther King, he envisioned the world like this, or Gandhi, or whatever. You can take business leaders, political leaders, whatever. But if leadership is an inside job, and then we have to have a vision for ourselves. And so it starts with an intention, like, okay, who is the person I want to be, and then you get the question, how do you decide that? I'm not clear. What kind of leader am I? Who do I aspire to be? And that's when people say, well, how do I do that? I'll say, well, look at who are the leaders and people you respect and admire, and what were their qualities? What about them do you admire? Oh, I admire their vision. I admire their wholehearted devotion to their purpose. I admire their, presence. I admire their courage. Okay, well, these are the qualities you admire the most that are most important to you. Okay, can you take a moment now, close your eyes, and visualize yourself 10 years from now embodying those qualities of vision and purpose and devotion to your cause. So, and that becomes your North Star. It is your rudder, your intention that directs you. This is the person I want to become. Well, if I don't know who I want to become, I mean, it's like, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to get. Right. So we have to be clear. Okay, I'm depressed. I'm drinking alcohol. I'm doing this and that. Is that the life I want to lead? No. I mean, if that's the life you want to lead, great. There's no problem. Keep on going. But if you feel like, no, there's something more, I want more vitality. I want more aliveness. I want more passion. I don't want to self-medicate with substances or whatever it is. Then, okay, this is my vision of I'm engaged. I have a sense of purpose. I have meaningful relationships. I'm part of a community. This is my vision for myself, for my life. And then I have that, and that's my North Star. And then I start working towards that. And it might take me 5-10 years. But if I have that vision of myself that's calling me forth, then I feel that pull. I feel that longing. And then if I trace that desire and that aspiration to its source, I'm going to find it comes out deep within myself, from my core, somewhere in my heart, somewhere in my gut, somewhere in my life force that says, okay, this is the life I want to live. And then when I'm connected with that longing and that desire, that's what's going to fuel my journey. And then I have to activate these qualities that I imagine myself to become as this courageous, purposeful, visionary leader, or whatever those qualities are.
Yeah, it's so funny because we call these, whether it's, we're going to get into spiritual intelligence now, but whether we call it EI, emotional intelligence, we call them soft skills,
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because AI could do just about everything, it will be able to do just about everything that, a CMO, a CEO, a CFO, if you just look at managing tasks. But when it comes to these soft skills, that's where it has a problem with, and especially being able to understand emotions or spirituality. On SI, spiritual intelligence, I want you to talk a little bit about that. I mean, you have been, but like qualities like purpose, integrity, intuition. As a leader, I'm like, what? Like, how does, that we have people that are listening right now that are like, integrity and intuition? Like, I gave that up a long time ago. I'm just trying to work my ass off, to pay for my big house and my, 4 cars. What does it look like, spiritual intelligence? I want people to completely understand that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about what is it. So we'll start with what's the 30-second definition of it, which I haven't yet. And let's see if I can do that in less than 30 minutes. But I'm just kidding. So what is emotional intelligence, which you mentioned? Emotional intelligence was a concept put forth by 2 academicians, Solovey and Meyer, in 1990. Up until then, we made a dichotomy between emotion and reason. If I ask you, do you know people in your life that you consider emotional? And you might think of some people. I don't know that would be the highest compliment. They probably have a lot of trauma and whatever.
Right.
Then if I say, do you know people that are emotionally intelligent? You think about something very different. And so we've bridged this dichotomy between emotion and reason, and that's what emotional intelligence is. But more specifically, emotional intelligence is the ability to draw on emotional resources and information to help us, function better. That's kind of the gist of it. And they got popularized, and there were all these measures that showed that if you score higher in emotional intelligence, you're a better leader, a happier human being, blah, blah, blah. So that's emotional intelligence. What is spiritual intelligence? So by analogy, spiritual intelligence is the ability to draw on spiritual resources and qualities and embody them in daily life. So unlike emotional resources, we're talking about spiritual resources. So what are those spiritual resources? So in my research, interviewing teachers and leaders across all the world's traditions, basically they come back to the same set of values and virtues, which is purpose, service, trust, gratitude, humility, compassion, forgiveness, and so on. So these are universal qualities, whether you believe in, Jesus is the Messiah, or Muhammad was the final prophet, or Father Sky, Mother Earth, like they do in shamanism, or Shiva Shakti in Hinduism, or in Buddhism, like you have no self and the Buddha was enlightened, whatever your theology, cosmology, they're still saying these are the virtues of a high quality life. And so they're common to all the traditions. This has been known for humanity for thousands of years. So what's about that? Now, the exciting thing is now we have a field in the last 20, 30 years started by people like Marty Seligman that talks about positive psychology, that says, okay, we're not just going to study pathology like Freud and DSM, diagnosis of depression, anxiety, and bipolar and schizophrenia, whatever. No, we're going to look at what creates the happiest, most fulfilled life. So they have developed this field of positive psychology. And Marty Seligman and his colleagues developed this thing called character strengths inventory and values in action. So there's 24 qualities. And when you look at those qualities, over half of them map with this 22 qualities of spiritual intelligence that came through in my research. So, whether it's humor and joy or transcendence or compassion or service, those are identical, integrity, etc. So, and then you bring in another field of study called leadership development. So Bain and Company, one of the top consulting companies in the world did a study with thousands of companies and employees. And they found that employees that are inspired are twice as productive as people that are just going about doing their jobs. So then they looked at what are the qualities that leaders embody that get their people around them inspired. And what did they find? Again, service, servanthood, servant leadership, centeredness, presence, compassion, listening, etc. So they had identified 33 qualities. And again, over half of the qualities in the spiritual intelligence framework that my research uncovered overlap with the qualities that Bain uncovered. Integrity is one of them. You asked about integrity. So I think we've all known when we work for people or are following people that don't walk the talk, we breed cynicism and we don't trust them, and we're not gonna be so committed and devoted to them. So, we all value integrity within our leaders and our friends, and integrity is not just being honest and never telling a lie. It's a felt sense when someone is aligned and they walk the talk, and it breeds trust. And we know that cultures where there is greater trust, there's greater productivity, there's less absenteeism, there's all the science around it. So integrity breeds trust breeds creativity and collaboration and engagement and all these things. So when we say spiritual intelligence, people think, oh, that sounds esoteric, mystical.
Right.
But this is again, like the emotional intelligence bridged the dichotomy between emotion and reason. Using emotions intelligently emotion is not in contradiction to reason. Spirituality is not in contradiction to practicality. So spiritual intelligence integrates the practical and the spiritual. I just want to highlight a couple other things. One is spiritual intelligence is not the same as spiritual belief system. It has nothing to do with belief system. Well, I shouldn't say that. So I can believe in God or not. I can believe in the reincarnation of the soul or not. Those would be spiritual beliefs. And then I can have a spiritual experience. I can meditate and feel my ego dissolve, one with nature. I'm walking in the forest. I feel one with the forest. Those are spiritual experiences. But what is spiritual intelligence? Now I'm in a team meeting at work, and is my ego getting hooked in and I want to prove myself right?
Yeah.
As opposed to doing the right thing. How do I drive on the freeway? Do I feel like, okay, I'm this separate individual in this metal box that's kind of like a tank, and we're all competing to get on and off the freeway and the ramps, and it's just a dog-eat-dog world, or do I remember, oh, okay, we're all human beings. We're all trying to get somewhere. There's a sense of connectedness, which is going to make me feel better and more connected and calmer and behave in better ways that are socially desirable for all of us. So, and I'm now in a relationship, and, do I want to be right, or do I want to make our partnership successful and happy? Am I present? So it has nothing to do with my belief. So my clients over the years have spanned the full range from people that are devout religious or spiritual but not religious or agnostic or devout atheists. But regardless of where you are on that spectrum, you can be a person of integrity. You can embody gratitude. You can have a sense of purpose and a call for service. And that's what I'm interested in helping people embody and cultivate, because we feel better about ourselves and people around us appreciate us.
Intelligence, and then get into the leadership side, because this is an inside job, as you said. Meaning, and in the book you have meaning as purpose and service. How do you, as a leader, whether they're, I don't know how old you were, when you had that. Most people haven't had what you had at the massage table, where ego dissolves and, here I am, and, I feel one with consciousness. So how do you begin to cultivate meaning, purpose, and service in your life?
Well, I think we're all gifted by life as number one. And two, we're all gifted a unique set of skills, talents, and superpowers. And that's life's invitation to us that says, okay, here's your gift. Now, someone gives you a birthday gift and you never open it, you leave it in the closet, and they come to visit you a month later and they say, hey, did you open my present? And you say no. And like, they're disappointed because, Jason, that's why I gave you this gift and I want you to use it. And so when life gives us a gift, and for some of us, it's, great listening ability and curiosity. For others, knowing how to solve math problems and becoming a programmer. And someone else, it's like a great sense of humor and they feel like a comedian. Someone else, they have a great artistic visual talent and they're a graphic designer or an artist, or someone else that's a musician. So life endows each of us unique skills and talents, and it's like an invitation from life that says, I want you to develop these qualities, unpack this gift, embody these qualities, and then use them to contribute to life. And naturally, if these are my natural talents, I'm going to be good at it. And when I exercise it, I feel fulfilled and I enjoy it. And then when I contribute it to others, I have a sense of meaning. There's a reason for my existence. I came here, life gave me these, endowed me with these gifts and talents, and I'm using it to help people around me. And I feel actualized and I feel a sense of belonging and contribution. So I'm of service and I'm actualized. So life has meaning, life has purpose.
I love that. And grace is always like that unmerited favor. And you had just mentioned relationships. But when it came to grace, your definition I thought was really cool as far as like trust, beauty, joy, gratitude, equanimity, discernment, inner wholeness, like freedom, like all of those things. That makes grace like a lot bigger than what, and if you led just from grace, you'd be best leader ever. Like,
yeah, if you embody these qualities.
Yes. Will you talk about grace?
Yeah, so you mentioned some of them. So yeah, I mean, we could think of grace as like it's coming down from the heaven and through us. And then maybe that's one way that you feel gratitude and trust in these qualities. But let's put that aside. The point is, as leaders, we have to embody trust. We have to trust the future. We have to have a sense of hope and optimism. Nobody's going to go out of their way and, put all of their efforts and blood, sweat, and tears behind a project they don't have any faith or trust or hope that it's going to get to fruition, that we're going to be successful. So as leaders, we have to give a sense of optimism and hope that this is not a futile task that we're taking on. I trust that we're going to be successful. So trust that actually is at many levels. I'm talking about trusting the future. We also, as leaders, have to trust ourselves, which leads to our confidence. If I don't trust myself, nobody else is going to trust me if I'm like full of self-doubt. And then as leaders, we also have to trust people around us to empower them. Otherwise, we're control freaks. And
right.
And nobody wants to work under a micromanager control freak. So trust is a fundamental quality, that we need to embody. And again, it's trusting ourselves, trusting the future, trusting life, and trusting other people. And they all reinforce each other. So, that's a key leadership thing, whether it's because, you're getting soaked by divine rain of grace or whatever, however you get to it, that's a key leadership quality. Gratitude, if we appreciate people, that energizes them. If we make a work environment that's fun and joyful, then there's more creativity. And there's all the research that says when there's joy and fun, there's creativity, there's better problem solving. And when we find beauty in our work, again, that motivates us. So we think of beauty, okay, I watched the sunset or the sunrise, or I watched this beautiful blooming flower right now in springtime. And, it's a wonderful, and those are all beautiful experiences. But can I find beauty in the way a team meeting goes? Just like I watch a basketball team, and the way they play together in harmony and the beauty of their moves and the skills, etc. Well, can we have beauty in a team meeting? How we interact? Can there be a beauty in a PowerPoint presentation that gets this ideas very concisely and to the point and whatever? If we find beauty in our work, in our colleagues, and how we work, we're so much more motivated and nourished and nurtured by our team. And then the people feel like, wow, there's beauty in our work. It's just like, That's going to be highly energizing and motivating. So these are all qualities of grace, trust, beauty, joy, gratitude. I think they make eminent sense without like some kind of, mystical spiritual belief system that.
Yeah, it almost makes like leadership fun. Like as you're talking, I was thinking of like, what if you went to a meeting and was like, you were grateful for each of those team members, and then you were like, let's have a beautiful meeting. Like people would think you flipped your lid, like you're off your rocker. But how fun would that be?
It would be awesome. Yeah, if we could take a moment to appreciate each other and wow, I really like your idea and it stimulates this in me and it makes me think this and just building on it. Okay, so it's just like we're passing the ball as a team. And I mean, isn't it more fun to play ball like that with each other?
Yeah, I love that. And I want to get into truth because with truth always comes, there's always this, haha, I need to find out as a leader, like who's screwing me over? I don't believe what the CFO said to me. He's just trying to, keep me down, all these different things like discernment and truth. How do you flip that around from a spiritual, intelligent, positive standpoint?
Well, yeah, we all value truth. I mean, truth is real and we for be based in reality and falsehood is not real. Fake is not real. So we have to stand on a foundation of truth. But this is where I go back to this other quality and all these things build on each other, but I mentioned trust. So if I come to you with a sense of suspiciousness and like, oh, you're trying to screw me, that's going to get you defensive and you're going to close down. What we want to do is create a sense of trust and flow. So I could be curious, like you're saying this, I'm not getting it. Would you mind explaining it to me? So that's interested in the truth. But I'm interested in what you have to say, Jason. I'm curious. I'm open. And so this helps us get to the truth together as opposed to based on my ego that wants to show that I am smarter than you and I'm outsmarting you, which will get you defensive. And then instead of on the same team collaborating towards a common goal, we have an adversarial relationship. And we've all worked in an organization where there is that environment. It becomes toxic. And people are like, oh, there's so much politics here. And I'm fighting more with my colleagues and other departments in the same organization as opposed to in the marketplace, to win in the marketplace. Now I'm trying to win, and make myself look good in front of my colleagues. And like that's distasteful. And so truth, yeah. But let's be open and curious about truth because we're really interested and motivated in the truth, not in elevating ourselves to put down others, which is the way our egos work. It's like, I don't know who I am and what my value is unless I feel that I'm smarter than you. So I have to put you down to feel good about myself. And then you are going to resent that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put my power in you. My self-esteem, my self-worth requires me putting you down. I mean, what a miserable way to live where I go around looking at everybody as the enemy of my self-worth. And then I don't feel, sympathetic joy in your success. I feel jealousy. You come and share something and I might, say congratulations. But in my heart of hearts, I'm like, Jason is getting all the goodies and I'm left behind and whatever. It's like,
do you think it's, and I want to get into consciousness because you're exactly what you're saying. I want to stay on this. This is so good. Do you think it's evolutionary psychology? Do you think it's just being ego driven? Why do we get that way? Somebody gets the promotion, somebody gets to stand and ring the bell. I thought I was going to be able to ring the bell at the stock market, but instead, Joe's only been here for 2 years. He's ringing the bell, why do we have?
Boy, that's a good question. I think for the one simple answer is ego, where we don't feel our inherent worth.
Mm-hmm. So challenging. Everybody's challenging it, like you said.
Yeah. And, that gets deep into psychodynamics. Most of us grow up in an environment where we experience some shame. We didn't get the perfect love we wanted. And it's in a roundabout way that doesn't make much sense, but we assume that the problem was with us. So we might grow up with an alcoholic parent that's misattuned or parents that are fighting and having divorce. Now, as kids, we're not intelligent enough to know, okay, well, mom and dad are not getting along and divorcing because of their problems. We assume that if we were better kids, that's the classic thing people, as they tell their kids when they go through divorce, just know it has nothing to do with you. We both love you. But for whatever reason, and, there's deep reasons why we take agency, we think it's my fault. So we think there's something deficient in us from day one. And then we're trying to build our self-worth by comparing ourselves to others and showing that we're superior. But that never scratches the surface or the itch. I mean, it only scratches the surface because when we come from a place of lack, I'm not enough. I need to prove that I'm better than others. There's always going to be the next person who's more successful and then puts us in competition with others. And then we feel lonely and isolated and don't have a sense of belonging. So it's a self-defeating strategy. If we believe we're unlovable and unworthy in our inherentness, then even if I win the love, they love me for my money. Mm-hmm. But I'm not lovable. What is lovable is my money.
Yeah.
So okay. So I went through the strategy because I didn't think I was lovable. To win love, I had to make, so much money. I got to get 1 million, 10 million, 100 million. Now I get attention, I get love, but then it actually reinforced my belief that I'm not lovable. Mm-hmm. It's a self-defeating strategy that just reinforces that belief I'm trying to run away from, that something inherent in me is lacking.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Like for me, one of the big issues I've had to deal with is and it helped me become successful, but it's bad fuel. And that's I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. So I got to work harder. I got to be harder. I got to work harder than everybody else. They work 12 hours. I'll work 15. They work 15. I'll work 18. It's from, like you said, it's like a childhood thing or something where you're just never good enough. Do you see that a lot with leaders? Like,
all
that self-sabotage?
All the time. I don't know if it's self-sabotage, but it's exhausting. I'm not, like you said, it can lead to high drive and a lot of success. But at some point you get to that spot and you say, was that worth it? And most people at the end of their lives don't say, I wish I worked harder and made more money. They say, I wish I spent more time in joy and connection and self-expression and love with people I care about. What can I say? I mean, and sometimes it gets to some success. Like for me, he got me to a certain level of success, but then I also, because of it, crashed. And then we go back and re-examine. So,
Do you feel like, because you make transcendence, that's a big word and everybody kind of thinks of it as like a woo-woo thing, but you make it real practical, like understanding higher self or understanding whatever form of sacredness that you practice. But you make it into kind of more of a practice. And I think as leaders, like for me, doing yoga or meditation or running, those are all things that for me put me in that higher self mindset.
Yeah. Well,
how do leaders get there?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Okay. So like you said, transcendence, you can think of it as mystical, whatever. But really another word for it might be interconnectedness or interdependence. So, we tend, from an egoic perspective, I tend to think of myself as separate. You're there, I'm here. The world is made of separate, distinct objects, etc. But now, realistically, I'm taking a breath. Okay, what am I doing? I'm inhaling oxygen. Where is this oxygen coming from? You can't see that, but there's a green plant on my desk here. There's green trees. I can look out the window here. Now, so I breathe in. Now I exhale. What am I doing? I'm putting out carbon dioxide. Where's that going? It's feeding this plant. So I'm actually in an interdependent relationship with the plants and the trees around. And so if I'm in a team, if I'm in an organization, I'm interdependent with my teammates. I mean, you need the engineering department, you need the sales department, you need the marketing department, the finance department. And so the company can't survive, can't work without all of us. It's like just the same in a basketball team or a soccer team or a football team, whatever it is. We all have our unique roles to play. So we're not isolated individuals the way it looks like to, our naked eye. like it looks like this plant is separate from me, but it's really not separate from me.
Right.
And my life depends on this greater web of life, the farmers that grow the crops and the people who transport and pick it and prepare it and stock it in the store and whatever. So none of us can exist on our own. So when I understand my interdependence with others, then I naturally feel a sense of affinity and belonging, and I have empathy and compassion. You're human, I'm human. So, and it's so important that in a work environment that there's a sense of belonging. And work for so many people is the primary community because we spend most of our waking hours more than anywhere else at work, whether it's in person in the office or some days on Zoom, some days on virtually. That's where I get most of my human connections. So I want to feel that people around me in the office at work care about me and that I care about them, and that we're human beings that have lives beyond. So it can be at some level, oh, how was your weekend? Oh, I hear that, your son graduated high school. Congratulations, whatever. But just those little things humanize us. And you're sick. Okay, you have a family emergency. I'll cover for you at work. I'll do this for you. And then next time I need a hand and a shoulder to lean on, So transcendence is a big word, but I'm just saying relatedness, interdependence, connection, compassion, empathy. That's how you bring these big words down to the human level. And that operationalizes it in a way that feels better, more fulfilling, and makes us more successful as a business, as an organization.
Yeah, I want to get into, so we just did ourselves, and so we have a blueprint, we have a framework. That's why I encourage everybody to buy the book, because it gives you a framework for working on yourself. And kind of as leaders, we always want the 5 this, the 7 this, the 9 that, So, I think that's our Western philosophy that we love the bullet points, So I want to get into the 7 dimensions of spiritually intelligent leadership. We probably have about 20 minutes. So we're going to have to kind of, do like synopsis on each of these. And like I said, people can buy the book, to go through these. But we kind of went into meaning, for ourselves. But what does it look like when we're giving purpose, service, and vision to others?
Well, ideally, we want to line up our purpose, our individual purpose, and the organization's purpose. So, I work often with CEOs and so on. So, you might think it's easier in a way, and they're the entrepreneur, they start the company, etc. But it could be at any level, so I could be leading a team of mechanics at an airline. And my gift and my talent is craftsmanship. And I like to work with my hands and solve problems and solve mechanical problems. So that is my craft. And that my purpose is to apply those gifts to fix and make things work and run smoothly. Now I'm working in an airline. So if I can bring those skills to bear and those capacities and that purpose and align it with the fact that the airline wants to deliver on-time departures and safe travel, then I feel like, okay, I can express my personal purpose of craftsmanship with the purpose of an airline that wants to deliver on-time, reliable, safe travel that's pleasant, etc. And then take someone else in the finance department. They're not into craftsmanship, working with their hands. They're into working with numbers and metrics and whatever. And so they're like, okay, I really like to do modeling and statistical analysis and spreadsheet. And that's my craft. And now I could do that to help us figure out the optimal routes and optimal pricing and whatever. So my point is, as leaders, as individuals, what we seek is alignment between our unique gifts and talents and sense of purpose and the greater purpose of the organism or organization we're a part of. So, I'm kind of hinting in my language at a metaphor, which is, in our human body, we have cells that have individual identity. They have cell membranes, and they have to keep themselves alive. If you look at within each cell, it's an amazing complexity that the cell is working on itself. But all these cells come from the same DNA, from the same stem cell, but they differentiate. And one cell is in the retina of the eye, another cell is a neuron in the brain, another one is a kidney, another one is in the thyroid. They all, or in the bones, they're all very different, but they're part of an organ, they have to keep taking care of themselves, but they have to function in the context of the organ, the team they're part of, which has to function with the context of the organism. So if I just take care of my individual cell, but my organ gets sick, or the whole organism gets sick, I mean, that's only going to last for a few days, and then I'm going to get sick and wither away and die. So the point is, each of us are, yes, we're an individual, but we're embedded into a team, into a department, which is embedded into a bigger organization. We need to find the harmony between our unique role and function and contribution. And just like in the human body, every cell has a role to play. And, for the highest optimal functioning of the organism, each cell has a role, whether it's a fingernail or a hair or cells in the heart. I'm not saying all of them are of equal importance, but they all have a role to play, and they're all important and have a contribution. And I think that's the sense we want to feel about ourselves. And that's the sense as leaders we want to give to everybody. So you're in finance, you're important. You're in marketing, you're important. You're in engineering, you're important. We all have a role, and we can only do it together.
That's so good. And we talked about grace pretty extensively, and leading with grace. Everyone can read the book on that. I want to get into inner directed, because there's two things, confidence and freedom. So, confidence is like fake it till you make it, that's the egoic way. And then freedom, it's like, well, I'm answering emails at 1:00 in the morning, on my global company that I created, because I got people, in Southeast Asia and emerging markets that are needing these questions answered. How do you look at inner directed? And then how do we get confidence and freedom from a spiritual sense?
Wow. Well, those are deep questions. It takes lifelong journey to really master. So I will say, if I may do a commercial for the book,
Yes.
These are deep abstract ideas that are a lifelong journey to develop them. But what I try to do in the book is that each chapter starts with a case study with a client that's coming in with a very relatable human challenge, and that how uncovering that quality, how to work with, uncover, and find that confidence or find that freedom. So, and then there are exercises. So this isn't just a book you read and you understand cognitive. Oh yeah, I need freedom. I need confidence. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That makes sense. I'm done. I understand spiritual intelligence. No, it's like, if I say, oh, you need a healthy diet and eat healthy, it's like, you don't just read a book about health, or you say you need to be in physical shape. You don't just read a book and say, okay, well, the human body maps into these muscle groups, and there's your, pecs, and you've got your forearms and your this and that. No, you go to the gym or whatever it is, and you work on them. And it's not a once and done type of thing. It's not a high and by. It's like, okay, so confidence and inner directedness, it's a journey. There are exercises in the book that lead people on how to do it. But a lot of it is learning to turn inward to find. So inner directedness means that my North Star, my compass is within me. So I got to learn to tune into my instrument panel, which is my soul, my body, my emotions, my physiology. So I could start to read it to know where my truth is, and where, so becoming inner directed is like you turn your attention inward, and we have so much information that our body produces over millions of years of evolution. But so much of us live in our head, and we're not paying attention. So we could do right now a simple thing. It's going to sound silly, but just as an experiment, look around the room and say to look at the color of the wall and name it. I mean, from here, it looks white.
Right. Yeah. It's white.
So you say the wall is white.
Yeah, the wall is white.
Okay. And just track your breath and how your chest and your life flows as you say that the wall is white.
Yeah, the wall is white.
Okay. And now say the wall is red. and see what happens.
The wall is red. You can feel that. Yeah.
What did you feel? It looked like you stopped breathing when you finished.
Yeah. You thought it's like contraction. And then also I was saying it, but I could feel like it wasn't resonating.
Right. Okay. So this is the simple, silly example to start to tune in how we have an inner compass and a truth meter, I call it. We have a God-given truth meter, if I can use that language, that tells us when we're speaking truth. But we have to learn to tune. I mean, it's easy when the wall is white or red. That's kind of a silly example. Most of the decisions we have to discern are a lot more complicated. And then we have to really work hard to tune our instrument panel to know, how do I discern their multiple values? How do I make a decision? I get on the bus, I'm tired, I get a seat, an elderly person gets there, I say, well, I could say, I'm tired, I need to stay seated. That's true. And there's an elderly person, my generosity and kindness asking me to get up and give him the thing. So, I mean, here might be clear what the right choice is, but I'm just saying often in life, I have 2 job offers. One of them aligns with my purpose. The other one is close to home, shorter commute, so it lines up with my value of family time and quality time with my kids. That is precious time. So now I've got purpose and I got family. Both are value. How do I make that choice? It's not so easy. So we have to really tune in and know what is of deeper value. And as we learn discernment and we get more in touch with the deeper aspects of who we are, then we become inner directed, and we're not just told, oh, you should do it this way or you should do it that way. That's someone else telling you how to run your life. That's not leadership. You're not leading your life. You're not being authentic to the who and really you are in your depth.
Yeah, that's so good. And for a second time, we're coming up on the hour. I could talk to you for, this book is so transformational and I think it's going to help a lot of leaders. But I do want to end it with this, because you tell a story in the book, Ted's story. He's a CEO who was, transformed from shame and depression to confidence, through spiritual intelligence. Because I want to leave everyone with some practical key practices. What drove his growth? And how can other leaders apply that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a journey, and it's spiritual intelligence, which builds on other psychological work and what have you. But yeah, when he came to me and we started working, I mean, his company raised tens of millions of dollars, but they weren't meeting their plan. They had to do several rounds of layoffs. His investors were disappointed. He felt depressed and shamed. So one of the things that turned it around was starting a gratitude practice, and like going through his day and looking for, the smallest things that he could be grateful. Oh, we got a new order here. So-and-so did a great job in this, project. And he started to appreciate those things. So his mood started to elevate gradually. The other thing was visioning. I asked him, okay, what's the business plan for the next year? Can you visualize that you met it? And okay, now that you visualize that you met it, visualize yourself walking into the board meeting and tell your board that we made it for a change compared to last year where we missed our plan by. So he kind of laid the neural pathways in his brain to believe that this plan is attainable. So that started to motivate him. And then he actually achieved the plan. And so his visioning became true. And then he took the principle of visioning and intention to every small thing. So and this is a standard sales technique that salespeople will use, is you go into a meeting and you visualize walking out with the order or whatever. And so, and people do that in sports. So you apply this vision that you have to make your brain and your nervous system and the universal pathways believe that this is possible for you. And so, he did that. So, and then he started practicing meditation to control his attention and stay on intention. So he became a lot more present in his meetings, both in his family and his teenage kids and at work, because our scarcest resource these days is our attention. So you're right here with me now. I feel your attention. You're tracking me through your body language, your head. So many of our meetings, we're going in and I'm thinking what happened yesterday or the fight I had. Yeah, or this, or getting text messages, the phone and social media, and our attention is so fragmented. But the quality of the meeting and the interaction, if we're managing our employees and are doing that in our one-on-one, the productivity, the effectiveness, the care they feel, we are not taking them seriously. Why should they take us and our job and their job seriously? So, practicing presence and becoming more present. So, it's just a journey. I mean, I could talk more and more about the things that Ted worked on together with me over the years. I mean, there was fear. Company came and wanted to buy him. He turned it down because he thought they could do better. It was a bigger player. Then they introduced a competitive product, and he was like kicking himself and like, oh, can we really fight it out? And when they announced their competitive product, everybody was like, well, how are we going to find this giant that's going to overtake us? So he actually listened to his fear instead of fought it, and it mobilized him that said, okay, you need to actually step up. And the fear motivated him to do all these things. They needed to improve their product, their quality, service, and customer solution. And so they could stay ahead of the competition and ultimately go public. But I'm talking about a journey that wasn't, weeks or months. I'm talking about things that over years, but that he became a different person, and it affected both his confidence and effectiveness as a leader and as a human being. It transformed all his relationships.
That's so good. I want to, Yosi, where can people go to? I know, of course, we'll have the link for the book and we'll have your personal links. But if somebody wants to learn more about this, is there courses? Is there coaching? Like, how can they start to get involved in transforming themselves through your work?
Well, thank you for that. I do have a nonprofit called awakeningspiritualintelligence.org or awakeningsi.org, and I have monthly free events focusing on one of these qualities. So just on Friday, we had one on living in integrity with truth, something we just talked about, and I give a little talk, but then there are small exercises that people do in small groups and so on. So those are free events that people can participate. I have a YouTube channel where the recordings are available. So Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, and the exercises are there so you could do them on your own, actually, with a journal or what have you. So there are many, many resources. If you go to my website, there's self-assessment tools that are free. They can give you a profile of your strengths and opportunities and tips for development. So you have to set the intention. It starts with the desire, the intention, the aspiration. And like anything, you fall off the horse, you get back on the horse. And that's how we get better.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate you and your work and what you're doing. It was amazing reading the book. And like I said, we want to encourage all of our listeners on Higher Density Living and Self-Aware Leader, both of them. We're going to be releasing this on both to purchase the book. Thank you, Dr. Amram.
Thank you, Jason. I'm honored and delighted.